students, my friends, and to all the viewers. I am Dr. Santosh Patil, Professor in General and Minimal Access Surgery. Today I'll be addressing a class on specific surgical site infections. Specific surgical infections are a result of a surgical procedure or those that require surgical intervention as a part of the treatment. They are characterized by breach of mechanical or anatomic defense mechanism, and they are associated with high morbidity, significant mortality, and increased cost of care. In my previous class, I have already addressed surgical site infections are the third most common cause for the nosocomial infections, and they are the most common cause of infections in any patient admitted in general surgery ward. The types of infection is again in my previous class I have told the infections are in the skin level, the muscular level, and the deep organ specific. So I'll be discussing in the same pattern. In the skin level usually and the muscular level, the infections are non-necrotizing infections in the form of an abscess or a cellulitis, and necrotizing infection where the tissue destruction takes place at the deeper level. Starting with an abscess. Abscess is the most common or the most obvious example of a surgical infection, which is characterized by a semi-liquid central portion, which is nothing but a pus surrounded by a vascular zone of inflammatory tissue. The pyogenic organisms which are predominantly responsible for these infections are the Staph aureus, which cause tissue necrosis and suppuration, which leads to pus formation. So the pus is basically dead and dying WBCs that release damaging cytokines and also oxygen free radicals and other molecules. So on examination, when you open the dressing of a patient who has undergone a surgery, when one can witness there is a collection or a swelling at the abscess area with all the signs of inflammation, that is redness is there, warmth is increased, and also there is severe tenderness at the operated area. And classical point is the fluctuation. The fluctuation is the characteristic sign of again abscess. So abscess will not resolve immediately, it has to be drained. The reason being patient is in excruciating pain, running with high fever and chills, so it has to be drained with surgical technique. So this is a picture of a patient who has an abscess where one can see there is a well defined borders. So abscess, this is a characteristic feature which differentiate it from cellulitis where the borders are ill defined. It's a diffuse type of inflammation. The cellulitis is a diffuse form of inflammation. Abscess is a within the confined borders. So there are different types of abscess, that is acute abscess and chronic abscess. Acute abscess are usually have a feature where they suddenly burst open, and there are again metastatic variety where usually a lung abscess usually metastasizes to the brain to form multiple abscesses in the body. The chronic abscess means the any abscess which is left untreated will go into either formation of a sinus or a fistula. So the treatment of abscess is important because if not, patient will be having continuous high grade fever, and patient may sometimes land into systemic inflammatory response syndrome and septicemia also. To prevent that, so incision and drainage, what we call as I&D, is the treatment of choice for any abscess. This treatment depends on the different sites. If the abscess is in the skin and the subcutaneous tissue, usually simple incision and drainage with the stab incision can be done. Depending upon the size of the abscess, if the abscess is small, a local anesthesia can be given. If the abscess involves a wide area of the skin and subcutaneous tissue, then the patient has to be subjected for anesthesia in the form of a regional anesthesia, sedation, or a short GA can be given. So incision is given in the stab incision with 11 number blade, and with finger dissection or a sinus forceps, all the loculi are broken and the pus is drained. The cavity is irrigated with hydrogen peroxide and betadine and again packed. That is the treatment for the abscess involving skin and subcutaneous tissue. If the abscess involves the deeper aspect like the perineal region or the breast abscess or the intraperitoneal, the treatment usually varies. Perineal abscess, the treatment is we make a cruciate incision so that whenever it just opens like a flap and does not close. The principle is the abscess has to drain continuously over 3 to 4 days with the cruciate incision this can be achieved. And the breast abscess, in the breast abscess, the treatment is we make an incision at the abscess area and also make a counter incision for the drainage, and a rubber tube or a suction drain can be placed for the continuous aspiration of the pus. In the intraperitoneal abscess, the treatment usually differs, which I am going to addressing in detail in the next slides. The second skin and subcutaneous tissue infection is the cellulitis. It is a non-separative invasive infection of the tissues, usually located at the point of injury or subsequent infection. The characteristic feature of this is, as I told, there is a poor localization. It means there is no classical demarcation where the infection, what is the extent of the infection, and in addition in addition to the cardinal signs of inflammation. Beta hemolytic streptococci, staphylococci, and Clostridium perfringens are the common pathogens that are involved in cellulitis. This is the picture which shows a patient with cellulitis with bleph formation. Any cellulitis patient left untreated will go into abscess formation because of a secondary bacterial infection. So certain people there are such susceptible patients like diabetes, immunocompromised, and underlying disease like varicose vein are highly susceptible for getting cellulitis. The treatment is usually conservative. Aggressive surgical treatment is avoided in cellulitis because with the incision there are high chances from local infection it may become a bacteremia or a septicemia. To avoid that, a conservative approach is planned usually with high antibiotics, and local glycerin max sulfate can be applied. If the inflammation or the cellulitis involves the foot, a foot and elevation with mild glycerin max sulfate, Dressen, and edema reducing medications can be given. When the patient, if the patient does not resolve, there may be a chances he may form a localized abscess in particular area which requires a surgical drainage. Usually these abscesses are usually diagnosed with a bedside ultrasound and picking up the localized abscess and small incision made exactly over the abscess area, and abscess is drained. So the next is the necrotizing soft tissue infection. These infections are rare but are difficult to diagnose as well, because the picture is suddenly the patient will have symptoms of those of septicemia. The patient require immediate surgical intervention with administration of high antimicrobial agents. The disease usually involves the subcutaneous tissue, the facial plane, or the muscular plane, or a combination of all three. There is marked by these diseases are marked by absence of clear boundaries or palpable limits. Means the disease usually spreads very rapidly. The disease has an extremely high mortality rate, about 80 to 90%. This is from the latest edition of the Shorts textbook, which says 80 to 100% of the patient have mortality if left untreated. Even with the best treatment, the patient has a mortality rate about 16 to 24%, which is again a significant number. And more than 50% of the patient, the cause of infection is usually polymicrobial. In the past, there were many terms that usually were described separately, like Melanese synergistic gangrene, Fournier's gangrene, rapidly spreading cellulitis, gas gangrene, necrotizing fasciitis. In the present era, it is only based, necrotizing soft tissue infection is based upon the soft tissue layer that is involved and the pathogens that are isolated from the fluid from these particular areas. There are many of the risk factors like elderly people and immunocompromised people, diabetic patients are highly susceptible. Patient with peripheral vascular disease are again highly susceptible for getting soft tissue or necrotizing soft tissue infection. Clinical findings, usually the disease usually involves the extremities, perineum, trunk, and torso. Pain is out of proportion. So when you examine a patient is literally wincing in the bed because of the pain. But on evaluation, clinical examination, the findings are very minimal in the initial stage. As the disease progresses, all the signs of inflammation sets in and the disease usually spreads very fast. Careful examination of the entry site shows a small break or a sinus, and later stage, as I told, as the disease involves and breaks the skin, upper skin layer, a dishwater pus, what is nothing but a turbid semi-purulent material, can be extracted from the wound. This type of fluid is characteristically seen when a fasciotomy is incision made, and such type of fluid is totally drained from the wound side. Skin changes can be in the form of a brawny induration, the blebs or the crepitus, and patient left untreated, again patient, there are high chances rapidly goes into septicemia and septicemic shock. This is the picture involving the necrotizing fasciitis and myositis of due to beta hemolytic streptococcal infection. There are certain laboratory risk indicator for necrotizing fasciitis, that is LRI NEC score. These are the variables that are given in this score, and the points are given accordingly, and this score will help in identifying the patient who have the risk of getting necrotizing fasciitis. These patients should be admitted, immediately started with high antibiotic, and the blood sample should be withdrawn for assessment of this score. The score involves the variables that are involved are the C-reactive protein, the WBC, hemoglobin, serum sodium, serum creatinine, serum glucose. This is a multiple choice question for the junior students or the MBBS students who will be appearing for their exams. So when the score is given, the patient are categorized into 3 groups: the low, the moderate, and the high risk of getting necrotizing fasciitis. When the score is less than 5 or equal to 5, there are less than 50% chances of patient having necrotizing fasciitis. In the moderate, it is 6 to 7 score, where 50 to 75% risk of patient having necrotizing fasciitis, and if it is more than 8 or equal to 8, there are more than 75% the patient has a necrotizing fasciitis. This not only says the risk of having necrotizing fasciitis, the mortality that is associated with this disease as well. The treatment is immediate surgical intervention. There is no role for any conservative treatment or observation. Immediately patient has to be subjected for operation theatre, and patient has to be counseled or mentally prepared that he may require multiple settings of surgery for the correction. The disease may be so aggressive, sometimes patient may usually need the amputation. Whenever the patient has been operated with the fasciotomy or excision of the dead tissue, and the dishwater or fluid has been aspirated, it has to be sent for analysis, like in the form of a gram stain, and high antimicrobial antibiotic covering all the organism, that is the gram positive, gram negative aerobes and anaerobics, has to be started immediately. And once the culture sensitivity reports are attained, antibiotic has to be substituted according to the reports again. This is the picture where the patient has gone a wide fasciotomy with thorough debridement with a viable muscle tissue that can be seen. This is the patient again where a fasciotomy wound has to be again closed with the delayed primary closure. If the disease, that is necrotizing fasciitis, is associated with Clostridial pathogens, the culture shows the Clostridial pathogen, the patient has to be subjected with penicillin G and hyperbaric oxygen treatment. So that is the skin and the subcutaneous tissue with the muscular involvement. Now the specific infection that involves the intra-abdominal and the retroperitoneal infection. These are the most serious intra-abdominal infection and require surgical intervention. The specific exclusion for these interventions are pyelonephritis, salpingitis, amoebic liver abscess, and certain other infection that usually can be managed with conservative management. The characteristic feature of intra-abdominal infection are fever, tachycardia, and hypotension. Mortality is high, usually about 5 to 50%. Intra-abdominal infections are synonym to the peritonitis. There are 3 types of peritonitis. One is primary microbial peritonitis, where the microbes invade the normally sterile confines of the peritoneal cavity, that is mainly by the hematogenous route. The common patients who are affected are the patients with ascites, or the patient who are on renal failure on dialysis. Usually for primary peritonitis, there is no surgical intervention required. Patient usually started with high antibiotics can be given to 10 to 14 days. Usually the infection subsides. The infection is usually that of a monomicrobial infection. Associated common agents are E. coli, and if a patient is on a dialysis, the infection is usually that of a gram positive infection. Usually these are the primary peritonitis infections. The secondary microbial or the peritonitis are the infection where there is a contamination of the peritoneal cavity, mainly because of the inflammation or perforation of the hollow viscous organ. Any intra-abdominal organs or the intraperitoneal organs gets infected, then the patient usually land into the secondary bacterial peritonitis. The treatment here is exclusively surgery, where the patient has to be immediately operated if there is a DU perforation has to be repaired, appendicular perforation has to be repaired, if there is gangrenous segment of the bowel, that has to be resected, and anastomose. And always these patients are given with the broad spectrum antimicrobial agents to cover the infection that is associated with the disease. This is a tertiary or a persistent peritonitis. That is, whenever a secondary peritonitis, a patient has been operated, and post-operatively if the antibiotic does not act, or whenever the host peritoneal defenses are very low, usually seen in immunocompromised patient, the patient from secondary peritonitis slowly transcends or enters into a stage of tertiary peritonitis. This is mainly because of the poor peritoneal host defenses. The causative organism commonly seen here are Enterobacter facialis and Faecium. The mortality rate associated with tertiary peritonitis is more than 50%. The operative intervention is any intra-abdominal or retroperitoneal abscess. Usually they require drainage. So post-operatively, if a patient has undergone a surgery and still complains of high fever, pain, and chills, rigors, and patient with impaired vitals, like patient having tachycardia and hypotension, one should suspect there is an intra-abdominal collection, and immediately patient has to be subjected for ultrasound or CT scan. Then depending upon the site of an abscess, a pictal catheter can be passed and an abscess can be drained. The cause of peritonitis must be always corrected, ruled out, whether it is a primary, secondary, or tertiary, and any foreign body. It can be in the form of a feces, the blood, bile, mucus, all should be removed. Usually, if it's an abscess, we remove it with the pictal catheter. So, this is the treatment for the intra-abdominal infections. So, what are the consequences? There are consequences that are associated. Patient that are the morbidity that is associated with this specific surgical infection is the delayed healing. Whenever there is a wound gets infected, the patient wound has to be opened. It has to be reclosed only after a wound infection subsides. So the healing process is delayed, and the patient left untreated may go into systemic infection and the complications associated with that, and increased hospital stay 7 to 14 days usually, or sometimes patients with, if fistula forms, patient may have to stay for almost months together in the hospital, which again adds up to his cost of the hospital cost, and increased use of antibiotic, which may again lead to resistance in future for these patients, and psychological effects on the patient and family. So considering all these factors, it's very important to see who are the patient who will be exposed or prone to get this type of infection, that it can be again assessed by the class of the wound. In my previous class, I have detailed told the class of the wound class that can tell what is the percentage of infection a patient may get post-operatively. And post-operatively, if a patient gets infection, this class will tell you what type of infection, how to handle those type infection. Thank you very much. Kindly subscribe my channel for general surgery and related topics.